Hey everyone, and welcome back to Engelbart Gaming. Every once in a while, I look at some modern controllers and see how they are and if they're worth getting. First-party controllers for game systems cost absolutely obscene amounts of money these days, but thankfully, unlike the olden times, we actually have some good third-party options now.
And there was much rejoicing.
One company that's not new to the channel is 8bitdo. I've reviewed a few of their controllers in the past. And yes, it's technically pronounced 8bitdo, not do, if you were wondering. Today I'll be taking a look at and reviewing 4 8bitdo controllers. 3 of them are essentially a variation on one controller, and the other is completely different. First, I'll be looking at the budget-minded Ultimate 2C controller, then I'll look at an Ultimate 2 Bluetooth, and then finally I'll look at the Ultimate 2 Wireless. And along with those, I'll be looking at the 8bitdo Pro 3 controller. And now the usual disclosures for reviews. 8bitdo sent me these controllers for free to review. They have zero input on the reviews and aren't seeing any part of the video or script before the video goes live. As always, whenever companies offer me products to review, I only accept them on the condition that I'll be allowed to review them honestly, whether that review ends up being good or bad. 8bitdo was fine with that, so here we are. Alrighty, let's get on with it. Alright, so I'm going to review all 4 of these individually, but I'm going to keep each of the reviews pretty short. The first one will be slightly longer because a lot of the stuff in it will apply to all 4 of them. And while I'm reviewing 3 Ultimate 2s, I can tell you before we start, the thing they have in common is the shape, general feel, and construction of the controllers. It feels like the same shell is used on all of the Ultimate 2s. If you use the original Ultimate controllers, they're really nice, and this feels basically just like them, with just a few internal improvements. A few external ones too. Alright, and we're going to do these sort of in the reverse order of fanciness. We'll start with the budget-minded Ultimate 2C. So in the box you get the controller, a USB-C to USB-A cable, instructions, and a 2.4 GHz dongle. Note that this is the only controller we're looking at today that does not include the charging dock. This is the budget version of the controller and typically retails for about $30. This also defaults to X-input mode, so it works great on a Windows-based PC and with both native PC games and emulators. You'll also get a handy-dandy turbo button that you can use to set continuous presses for most buttons. Regarding the feel and build quality, it's all great. It feels like a much higher priced product than it is. The sticks feel great, allowing for the smooth motion that you would expect out of these, and the D-pad is tall enough that it's got some play, which is good for these standard cross-shaped D-pads. Personally, I prefer the floating disc Sega-style D-pads, like the ones on the 8bitdo M30, which is still an awesome controller by the way, but for a standard cross-shaped pad, this is still well done and feels pretty good. The buttons are all convex, and a little more convex than I'd personally like, but they're fine. The shoulder buttons feel really solid. The triggers are analog with good sensitivity, and the sticks are fine, if maybe just a tad tight. Now one thing I like on the Ultimate 2C that's different from the others is that it doesn't have back paddle buttons, which I generally leave disabled on controllers because I tend to press them way more by accident than on purpose. Instead, this adds 2 more small shoulder buttons right here that act as what they've called L4 and R4. Now the Ultimate 2C that I've got and I'm showing you here is a smoky transparent black one. It's actually kind of two-tone with the top being a bit transparent and the bottom half of the controller being totally opaque black. It also comes in a bunch of other colors, which I'll put on the screen here. Now you can either use this controller wired, over Bluetooth, or over wireless with the included 2.4 GHz dongle. This one is usually priced at just under $30 like I mentioned, but I've seen it even lower. And one of the most attractive things about this is the 1000 Hz polling rate, making it ideal to use with FPGAs or other low latency systems. Just note the 1000 Hz polling rate only applies to the wired and 2.4 GHz connections, not Bluetooth. And why do we care so much about this whole latency thing anyway? Because with a lot of very low latency devices, the faster you move a stick or touch a button on your controller, the quicker the action is transmitted to the game. In games like shooters, or shmups, it means your ship starts moving almost as soon as you press down on a direction, rather than there being a slight delay between the time you press a direction and then the ship actually moves. So I did a quick latency test on my computer using the handy-dandy polling.exe, and I've included a link in the description if you want to test this program on your own controllers on your own PC to see how much latency they have. I tested the controller over a wired connection and it averaged right about 1.4 to 1.7 milliseconds, with maximum response time of just about 4 milliseconds. Switching over to Bluetooth, our response time is way worse, as expected. It averaged between 10 and 11 milliseconds, but with delays up to about 58-ish milliseconds. Yeah, Bluetooth isn't the best for quick controller response. Now, in-game performance was fine, and I'd say if you're looking for a good, affordable controller and intend to use it wired or over 2.4 GHz, well, here you go. There's no need to stretch this out. It works over Bluetooth, but expect much more latency if you're connecting that way. My only real complaint here is that the D-pad could be a smidge better, and I had a little more trouble with games like Street Fighter II Champion Edition pulling off some standard Street Fighter moves than I do on some other controllers. One last stylistic note, you'll notice the buttons here are in the Dreamcast/Xbox formation, meaning we've got XY on the top buttons and AB on the bottom ones. There are also Switch versions of this controller with those buttons reversed to accommodate Nintendo's button layout. We'll actually be taking a look at one in just a moment. So anyway, for the 8bitdo Ultimate 2C, let's call this a budget controller, which I'll define as any controller between about $20 and $30. In that class, as a review score, I'd give the 8bitdo Ultimate 2C a 9 out of 10. There's still a little room for improvement, especially with the D-pad, but this is one of the best, cheaper controllers I think you can buy right now. Next up, we've got the 8bitdo Ultimate 2 Bluetooth controller. This one is primarily designed for use with the Switch, and it has the buttons labeled accordingly. Regarding price, this one is in the upper end of mid-range controllers, typically retailing for between $60 and $70. You might think because this is labeled the Ultimate 2 Bluetooth controller, it only works over Bluetooth connections. If you think that, well, you're wrong! This controller also supports wired and 2.4 GHz wireless connections, and it's got a switch on the back to change between 2.4 GHz and Bluetooth wireless modes. Now, everything I said about the build quality, button, and stick feel on the Ultimate 2C applies here too. It really doesn't feel any different than that controller. What is different is that it also has rear paddles, it's got lights on the front to indicate the player number on the Switch or other platforms, it's got individual switches that let you change the L and R shoulder buttons from analog to digital mode so you can get a digital click out of it, and then of course we've also got the charging contacts for the included charging dock. Speaking of which, here's the charging dock. You can just plug in the included USB-C end of the cable to the dock, and then the USB-A cable onto your computer or other device if you want to use it this way. The 2.4 GHz dongle is actually connected inside the little compartment on the bottom of the charging dock, and you don't need to remove it to use the device in 2.4 GHz mode. Now you can if you want, if you don't have a convenient place to put the dock, but it will work if it's connected to the dock while the dock is connected to a device. So next, let's talk about input response time. I tried this wired first, and the average response time, according to good old polling.exe, was around 10.9 milliseconds, which is okay, but you'd hope for a little better with a wired connection. So the cheaper Ultimate 2C with its 1000 Hz polling is actually better to use over wired connection than this Ultimate 2 Bluetooth controller. I'd love to tell you how Bluetooth performance was relative to wired, but unfortunately, this controller would not pair to my PC over Bluetooth. It worked fine on the Switch though. Now the included directions state that for Windows it only supports 2.4 GHz connections, so I'll give it a pass on that, but I really would like to have tested it. Oh, and battery life on both the prior and this controller are fine. You'll get many hours between charges. 8bitdo estimates about 20 to 25 hours on a charge, and from my experience testing these things out for about the last 3.5 weeks, that seems just about right. Now you can make sure the controller gets maximum battery life by disabling the RGB lights on it if you want, which I generally always do with controllers anyway, because I hate them. And to charge this controller fully from nothing, I'd ballpark it at about 2.5-ish hours. Alrighty, so with this bumped up a tier in price, but with included extras and more functionality, what are my thoughts on the Ultimate 2 Bluetooth controller for Switch and Windows? Well, at the higher price, I've got to bump this down a notch to an 8. Close to a 7, but I'll stick with an 8. Now, I love the charging dock that comes with these, which is a huge bonus. The controller experience was good and offers a lot more functionality than the 2C. So why the lower score? Well, the 2C has slightly better connectivity options and considerably better response time when wired. The Ultimate 2 Bluetooth is still a very good controller and a fine alternative to the official Switch Pro controller, which I happen to think is absolutely awful. A final plus with this controller, which is not super unusual for Switch 1 controllers these days, is that you can wake the Switch with its home button. For the Switch 2, you need a firmware update, then you can enable Shake to Wake, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. So primarily as a Switch controller, I will give this an 8 out of 10. Okay, this is the last of the Ultimate 2 controllers, and in theory, the best. The Ultimate 2 Wireless. The Ultimate 2 Wireless supports, well, basically everything. It has listed support for the Switch and Switch 2, Android, Windows, and Apple devices. So you might be wondering then, why would anybody want the Ultimate 2 Bluetooth instead of the Ultimate 2 Wireless? Well, I'll break it down just real quick here and let you know that if you're primarily going to use it on the Switch, you've got the Switch button layout with the YXBA, and you've also got the Switch player lights to indicate which player number you are. The Ultimate 2 Wireless has the Dreamcast/Xbox button layout again, which might annoy some Switch fans, and it doesn't have the player light showing you which player you are. Now, the build quality and button feel are the same across all three of these controllers, so everything I've already said about those things for both the Ultimate 2C and Ultimate 2 Bluetooth apply here as well. All the extras I mentioned from the Ultimate 2 Bluetooth are present here, including a sync button, the rear paddles, the additional L and R buttons, the switches for the analog triggers, etc. However, this one also has the 1000 Hz polling rate of the 2C, making the Ultimate 2 Wireless, well, the ultimate controller of the Ultimate 2 controller line. I fired up polling.exe one more time, and you can see that when wired, this controller averaged about 1.1 milliseconds for response time. So it was on par with the 2C and much better than the Ultimate 2 Bluetooth over a wired connection. When switching over to Bluetooth, the delay was reported at roughly 11.5 milliseconds after several tests. I tested this one over 2.4 gigahertz also, and it was really right about the same as wired, which is what we expected. And I should mention, if you're using this with the cradle or any of the other ones that come with the cradle, all you do is plug it into your PC, the cradle with the USB wire, put the controller on it, and then take it off and it's ready to use. You don't have to press any buttons or anything. It'll just start working. So the 8bitdo Ultimate 2 Wireless really is the ultimate controller of the Ultimate 2 line, like I said just a moment ago. Pairing it was both easy over Bluetooth and using the cradle over 2.4 gigahertz. Just always remember to make sure that the switch on the back of the controller is set to the correct mode. It's an easy thing to overlook if you're new to these controllers. If you want a jack-of-all-trades controller, well, the Ultimate 2 Wireless is really the one you want. It's great for FPGAs, for PC, and for supported consoles. It's not completely ideal for the Switch since it doesn't have the right button layout or the player indicator LED, but that's a small price to pay for essentially universal compatibility. The only complaints I have about this one were basically the same ones I had about the 2C. The D-pad could stand to be a little better, and the convex face buttons could be a smidge better and not quite so rounded on top. So in the end, for the mid-range group of controllers, which I'll define those as controllers between $31 and $70, I'd give this a 9 out of 10, and it's an easy recommendation for anyone looking for the most versatile of the Ultimate 2 line. Alrighty, the Ultimate 2s are great and all, but I saved what is probably the most interesting controller for last. This is the 8bitdo Pro 3 Bluetooth controller. It's primarily made for the Switch and Switch 2 and has the layout of an expanded SNES controller. We've got the sort of pill shape and everything is spread out a bit. We also get the comfort wings on the side of this controller, and it is very comfortable to hold. I'm going to hold off on telling you exactly what's in the box for a moment, because if you don't know about this one, I want to surprise you with that. Now, you'll notice the D-pad on this controller is in the upper left, sort of like you would find on a PlayStation pad, with the analog sticks kind of in the middle, like you would also find on a PlayStation controller. And the pad itself feels kind of similar to the Ultimate 2's, but everything else really feels quite a bit different. The face buttons are a little bit further apart and much flatter, which is good. I vastly prefer the shape of these, but honestly, I think I would still prefer the 2 convex and 2 concave setup of the SNES. Still, these flatter buttons are great. They're more comfortable to use for a longer period of time. The select and start buttons are softer and almost gummy like an SNES pad. The L and R shoulders and triggers are a bit different shape, and we still have extra buttons here too. Once again, we do have the switches that allow us to toggle the triggers between analog and digital clicks if we want. And then we've also got left and right paddles on the back. Those things that just aren't for me, so I just don't use them, but if you love them, they're here. And first up, I will say I've been using this as my main Switch 2 controller. Wait a minute, Switch 2? What? Yes, I broke down and got one because Mrs. Engelbard really wanted to play Pokopia. I probably won't get a Switch 2 game myself until Xenoblade Genesis comes out. Most third-party controllers can't wake the Switch 2 from sleep if you didn't know, and that includes this one out of the box. However, you can update the firmware using an app provided on 8bitdo's website. After you do that, and I'm not going to go over the steps here, you have to very precisely follow the instructions to enable the Shake to Wake feature. And I mentioned that earlier, so we'll talk about it now. While the Switch 2 is asleep, you can actually just shake this controller and it'll wake the Switch 2, and then the controller might need a moment, but it will pair automatically to the Switch 2, so you don't need to get up and manually turn your system on like a caveman. Now, want to get nuts? Let's get a little nuts. I don't like the layout here of the YX and BA buttons. I prefer them reversed. So maybe what I'll do is just tear them right off the controller, and I'll move this here, and I'll put this there, and voila. perfect. Yes, you can move the face buttons on this controller. They're magnetic. It doesn't change their function, just their positions, so that you'll know they're in the right places. I love this feature. You also get unlabeled, colored buttons in the box if you prefer to go that route. And if you aren't a fan of the standard, mostly flat analog sticks, or maybe wish they were a little taller because you've got huge hands, well, we can rip those out too and replace them with these little ball joysticks. Neat, right? These are all included in the box. For me, this personally makes this controller a bit too tall for comfort, especially considering its shape, but I think it's great to have the option and that these things are all included. So for Switch 2, this thing works great. If you don't want to spend the insane $90 that Nintendo is asking for their not-so-great Pro Controller 2, this is a great alternative. The Pro 3 also has a charging dock just like the Ultimate 2's, and as I record this, you get everything I talked about in this package for $60. That's $30 less than the official Nintendo Pro Controller. The only minor negative here, I feel, are that the face buttons are a smidge further apart than I would like, and the D-pad is still about the same as the Ultimate 2's, which means it's really good, but it's not perfect, and sometimes you'll have to wait a bit after using Shake to Wake for this thing to actually connect. And making Shake to Wake work in the first place, like I said, you have to follow very precise instructions. Do any step out of order, and you basically have to remove the connection manually, and then do the entire process again from scratch. If you're wondering about response time on the Pro 3 controller, it was pretty good. I only tested this one wired, and it's about 8.3 milliseconds on average. It's not quite as good a number as we've seen from some of the other controllers today, but it also doesn't have the 1000 Hertz polling rate that those other controllers have. The wired performance of the Pro 3 controller was still notably better than the wired performance of the Ultimate 2 Bluetooth controller. So everything considered, I'm giving the 8bitdo Pro 3 a 9 out of 10. I imagine this will be my main Switch 2 controller for years to come, unless anything goes wrong with it. If anything does go wrong, you can expect a card to pop up in this review somewhere with a link to a new video explaining what's happened. Now, 8bitdo stuff is usually pretty good quality and lasts a while, but some of their controllers have definitely been better than others. I have my fingers crossed that I'll get a long time out of this Pro 3. I'm still using the M30 I got like 6 years ago, and I actually bought 2 more of those when they were on sale super cheap last year. Alrighty folks, so there you are, a look at 4 8bitdo controllers. To summarize them briefly, the Ultimate 2C is a nice budget option that retains some of the versatility of the fully featured models and has excellent response time. The Ultimate 2 Bluetooth is a good controller for Switch and Switch 2, but I wouldn't really recommend it for other systems, which is fine since it was really built for the Switch ecosystem from the start, just like 8bitdo also makes some controllers geared specifically towards the Xbox ecosystem. Now the Ultimate 2 Wireless is a really great all-arounder that will work on loads of different devices with a minimum of hassle. If you mess around on a lot of different devices like I do and want something that's very easy to connect and use on all, or at least the very vast majority of them, this is the one if you've got the money for it, and the asking price is very reasonable. Finally, the Pro 3 is a really great solution for the Switch 2, especially for those that don't want to spend a small fortune on a substandard controller from Nintendo. This one's easily replaceable magnetic face buttons and replaceable analog sticks give it some extra versatility if you want to use it on other platforms too, but I think it really shines as one of the best controller options for Switch 2 as of the time of this recording in July 2026. So guys, there's like a million controllers out there. Some of them are great, some of them are garbage. I used to do quite a lot of controller review videos, but kind of moved away from those over the years because it didn't seem like there was as much interest in those as the other things I cover. If you want to see more controller reviews like this, let me know. I've got button-only controllers, I've got joysticks, and a plethora of other gamepads that I could review if you want to see and hear about them. Okay, your turn, folks. Do you have any of the Ultimate 2 line of 8bitdo controllers? What do you think of them? Have you tried out the Pro 3? What do you think of that one? Go ahead and leave a comment and tell me what controller or controllers you use for both modern and retro games. So that'll do it for this video, my retro gaming and I guess modern gaming friends. If you enjoyed it, please like and share it online somewhere. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of my videos. You can support the work that I do here on the channel through my Patreon, through Ko-fi, or right here on YouTube through things like Super Thanks and channel memberships. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.